hitting the ground running as a downtown assessment team. This is going to be a 90-minute total presentation. As mentioned, we are recording this to share it out. Quite a few business owners couldn't make it. I'll turn it over to Carol to introduce the team again and kind of go over the things. But again, on behalf of Brooklyn and the Downtown Alliance, thank you for spending 3 days here. And we'll be thanks the best downtown in the island. So let's make it better.
Thank you, Matt, and thank you, Megan, for your hospitality. It's been a great 3 days that we have been here. We're excited to share our observations with you. As Matt said, I'm Carol Lilly with the Iowa Economic Development Authority. I primarily work on the Downtown Resource Center team, and a lot of my time is actually spent in nature. But I have 20 plus years of experience with Iowa downtowns. Have done a little stint around the Midwest, Nebraska, Arkansas, Minnesota, and Iowa, working in this field over a number of years. In addition to what I've done. So with that, I'm going to turn things over to our team. We're all going to introduce ourselves, and then we're going to dig right into the presentation. So we'll start with Jess on the end and work our way down.
I'm Jessica Rucker. I'm the director of Main Street Waterloo. Hi, I'm Peyton Anson. I'm a landscape architect and urban designer out of Des Moines.
My name is Ben Muldrow, partner with Arnett Muldrow and Associates planning firm out of Greenville, South Carolina.
And I'm Jeff Hughes with the Iowa Economic Development Authority as well. And I'm proud 1987 graduate of high school, so it's great to be back in the neighborhood. I'm going to kick things off. We have a lot to share with you this morning. I was sharing with these guys a little bit ago a quote that there's a fine line between a long sermon and a hostage situation. We're in a room center. It kind of feels like we're in church. Everybody's like in the back except for Brendan. He's got a gun. Yeah, so our hostage situations taken care of. We're safe. So why is downtown important? It really is the center of your community. It's the place where the story and the history of your community really began, and it's the place where you can still share that history, that story, but also build new stories and build community. And it really is the opportunity to make your community unique from anywhere else. When everybody these days, unfortunately, has the strip malls, the strip plazas, you get to like anywhere in USA, you can even tell where you're at. But your downtown is still an opportunity to really set you apart, and particularly in your case, it's really, really true. So as Carol did the introductions here, we do about 6 to 8 of these downtown assessments a year. And this is usually the process we follow. Normally we have a survey, but Girl Clinton has done quite a bit of surveying over the last few years. So we actually, instead of using our survey, are using some of the data from the survey that they've sent out. I think maybe a year ago, a little year plus, but then they also have been recently updating it. We have some of the more recent information. Driving tours, walking tours. I think we met with I think we met with everybody who was in this room, and probably about 70 of your colleagues. The presentation today, and probably the most important thing I want you to keep in mind is Cities in Girl Clinton is going to get a much more in-depth report. So we're just going to touch on some of the key things today. It's kind of a teaser to the report.
Yep, I get to hit on numbers. I like really pretty pictures, but I get to talk about numbers as well. Some demographics and things that I think are particularly interesting. We use a service called Claritas. Claritas and Esri are kind of two of the primary national data houses that retailers use for site selection and things like that. So a couple key notes. You're coming in at about 24,000 people in the city. One of the interesting things is you also come in at just under 36 square miles. So that puts you at about 675 residents per square mile, which is extremely low. You are land rich and people low, if that makes sense. Comparatively, when you look at like a Burlington, they're sitting at somewhere a little more like 1,700 people per square mile. So you have an interesting dynamic where you think about the people that are producing revenue in relation to the land that you're trying to maintain, and ask anybody that has to cut grass for the city. So those are some interesting dynamics. About 10,000 households in the city itself. Median age of the householders about 56. The category with the largest housing stock, 85 plus years. that's not actually, don't take that as a bad thing. It actually means that you're a community that has preserved and maintained some aging housing stock. Some other interesting things, I'll hit on a couple of these numbers a little bit later on. 67, almost 68% owner occupied. That's a really, really good number. In most communities, we like that to be mid to high 60s. Once that number starts to get too down into the low 50s, we start to be a little concerned with owner engagement in a community. We looked at educational attainment, median household incomes, average household incomes. Those are a little bit on the low end compared to national averages, but the cost of living here is also more affordable. So we would love to see the overall average incomes increase and the community wealth increase, but not the kind of number that we're shaking in our boots on. And then finally, we dug into some of the occupational data. And again, I'll share that a little bit more, but this idea that you are, although you're a community that you're aging and you are experiencing some slight population decline, less than 1%. Those are trends that we're seeing in a lot of different places across the country. We don't see any key indicators that are kind of signals that, hey, we got a problem. Everything is solid and there's plenty that we can do to kind of change those dynamics. And it's amazing what one employer or a series of small upstarts can do when we're talking about your numbers. So we're excited to dig into more. I'm going to pass it back over to Jeff.
Thanks, Ben. So I mentioned the survey. It's kind of gives you an idea of the breakdown of the demographics who responded. This is just the data from the last few weeks. So this is kind of the second iteration of the survey and newer respondents. And there's about 75 to 80 respondents since the survey was relaunched. Just give you a little idea of when the last time people visited downtown to shop. And it really is kind of boils down to the community really wants more experiential opportunity downtown, more opportunities for entertainment, more opportunities for dining. They really like the events that currently take place, and we really like to have more of them. And to support all that, it's really important to have a safe, clean, and attractive downtown. You'll get this information in the report, so I'm not going to go bullet by bullet. We identified from our viewpoint, since we've been here, what we believe are some of the strengths and assets. Just got to touch some of the highlights. You see them there. Obviously, the river and the proximity to the river, the affordable living that Ben already mentioned, your parks, the riverfront, Eagle Point, for example, the troll destination thing. Like, it's amazing the impact that has had in bringing people into town. And we've seen 3 of them. I think actually Jessica's seen all of them now. The culture for volunteerism, then you do really serve as that regional hub. And then we boiled those community strengths and really looked at what are the assets and the strengths of downtown. The architecture, the walkability, your streetscape. I can't tell you how many downtown assessments I've done where there are 0 trees, and we beg and plead for trees. You have such a great, beautiful streetscape here. It's really one of the better ones in Clinton. It's really complete and well done, and it's aged very well too for how long it's been in place. And all that, the buildings, the streetscape, the walkability really create a unique sense of place here for Clinton compared to many other downtowns. So that's, you've got the great foundation already in place. Your events are really well received, very popular. You've got some nice public art installations. You've got more coming. You really have ample parking. There's probably somewhere in the neighborhood of 2,000 spaces. I know, just looking at aerial imagery, I counted about 1,400, and that was very conservative. It didn't include business lots being used for churches and stuff like that. And your upper story housing opportunities, we think are a key piece for many reasons. We're going to touch on that in more detail here shortly. We also saw some opportunities, really some opportunities to, with the attractive community that's here to attract those workers that will help in your recruitment of additional job opportunities, the expansion of trails and recreation. That's really a hot issue in any community, but you've really got the great natural resources and a great geography for trail work, redevelopment of the vacant properties, and we're going to talk about that a fair amount today as well. And then also some opportunities to really help support those entrepreneurs that could really help redevelop those vacant properties. Downtown in particular, we see and we'll share some opportunities we think to better activate some of your underused spaces, some opportunities to expand your outdoor gathering opportunities downtown as well. Again, going back to the upper story housing discussion and maybe some infill opportunities in increasing your downtown residential density. And how can we better bring those troll visitors into the community and get them to linger longer, shop more, and spend more money while they're here, and maybe move here too. So we broke this into 5 different themes that we're going to talk about, and we're going to start first with people, partnerships, and the process.
Thanks, Jeff. So this people partnerships process really is kind of the foundation of, we're going to build off of all of these elements as we go through the rest of the themes. But just want to think about who are the players within the community. The city obviously has the biggest role, and kind of this, when you think about, we always say this, is the tail wagging the dog or is the dog wagging the tail? The city's the body of the dog. They're the ones that really are the driving force between everything that happens in Clinton and a lot of things that happen within your community. But there's also some great partners. And again, thinking our focus is downtown, even though we do have that community-wide lens that we've looked at the community with. But we are going to be focusing on kind of this downtown piece, which is why some of these partners are specifically called out. The Alliance, Grow Clinton, and then the foundations, kind of that money side, if we can help contribute. That public-private partnership that we like to see that Jeff's going to dig into a little bit later today. And then also other partners. Who else should be at the table? We've had great conversations with some of the nonprofit groups and museums. We talked to the Historical Society, the Historic Preservation Commission, the division of the city in some way. But all kinds of people can be helping to contribute and have roles in place to play in the overall development of the community. So there's really that layered approach to affecting your downtown and how it continues to evolve. First being ordinances, you have some great ordinances in place to kind of protect the properties that are here. There may be a little misconception about what some of the ordinances are or the interpretation of them between the public. In our experience and conversations we had, there was more than willingness to answer questions. We had questions throughout the day. Is this possible? And we could hear back from Eli and was really willing to work with us and help us understand some of those local dynamics within the community. Zoning, are you zoned properly to achieve the goals that you want to have? So looking at all of these elements are really going to be part of what we're going to be talking about too. Enforcement is the other thing too. Whatever ordinances you have, if you don't have that enforcement side, then they're really not effective and you're not going to be able to achieve the goals that you want. I'm just going to dig into design guidelines, so I'm going to kind of skip over that section. But when you think about the ordinances, they're really the goals that you want to achieve. Are you able to look at the affect building condition? Are you able to identify is an appropriate use and the use of the building? When you think about the layout of the community in the right places, do you need to start having kind of that puzzle piece and moving things around? First floor residential, I'm sure this is probably already in your code. We did not see any of that here. I appreciate that too. But you can create your goals and accomplishments through an effective look and review of the ordinance that you have. I think Deb, right? Deb? Brenda. Sorry.
Brenda.
Told a story about a building that was kind of next to your property, is that right? Where there was a collapse of the roof. When you think about the ordinance side of things and you have tools in place, the enforcement of those really is important because what you allow one property owner to do is really affecting another property owner. You have a absentee property owner who isn't willing to invest and do things. It's really affecting the people that are here making things happen. So you need to look at your ordinances and your enforcement kind of from that lens as well. Talked a little bit about zoning already. You do have a great overlay. Is it appropriate for the mix, as we said, a potential historic district? Jeff's gonna dig into that a little bit later. But that alignment, the alignment of the code and the goals that you want to achieve, kind of back to Brenda's example. Do we have the tools in place? Are we willing to enforce what we have? And if it's not achieving our goals, then what do we need to affect or modify and change those ordinances so we can get the results that we want? I will take an example. The Mars is a community that we work quite a bit in. And they were having an issue with vacant buildings and underutilized spaces. So they started the process of developing an ordinance that was related to building use and having open business hours. You had to have activity in and out of the building to be considered a building in use and not a vacant building. So they tied it to use. And what happened was, before they even had to start enforcing that code, the property owners, because they were educating the public about the changes that were coming, and those property owners, not all, but several of them actively chose to sell their buildings. They realized that change was coming. They didn't want to be a part of it. So it really kind of worked itself out for quite a few of their buildings. If you haven't been to Lamar lately, I know it's a little bit of a jaunt across the state, but I encourage you to check it out or at least do a little research online because it really did make meaningful change in their community for a specific example. As I said, you do have some great codes in place, but you also have some results maybe that you're not looking for. Some of these buildings may be active. It doesn't appear to be active to me at this point, but just wanted to demonstrate as an example that maybe you might have some work to do in this area. You need to be development ready. And what does development ready mean? I don't need to read this entire list to you, but what you do want to do is make sure that there are the tools in place and that you're welcoming. There seems to be a misconception. We've heard through in several meetings that the city was hard to work with, that developers don't want to come here. I can tell you, we hear that in a lot of communities that we go to. Our experience, like I said, was maybe a little bit different, but again, understanding what's allowed, what's not allowed, how do we educate people? And and who's responsible for that? Kind of back to that people and partners. There's a place for Grow Clinton. I'm in the wrong town. There's a place for the Alliance to help with that education process. There's tools and there's things that actually Ben's going to talk about and how we can make that a positive experience for people as well. The historic review, you guys have some great bones. You already have, I think, what did you say, just 16 buildings on the registry within your community? Maybe looking at a historic district as a whole, what does that look like? And what are the benefits to the community? Oftentimes we think about the negative side of things and what the downside would be. We need to start looking at the positive things and what we could accomplish if we had some of these tools in place. People that should be around the table, in addition to those that are here, you know, realtors, bankers, property owners, all having conversations, getting around the table, understanding what you'd like to do, creating tools and resources for people to understand what the process and what the steps are, and understanding that pipeline to have to start when a project has an idea and how do we get that to a complete phase. There's all kinds of wonderful examples. We have, you know, starting a business in downtown, starting a building project within a community. We can share many more of these examples with you, but just want to show some ideas that you might be thinking about. And again, this is a partnership, the public-partner side. Maybe this is an alliance or a Grow Clinton piece that they are helping to identify, that they're helping to create and to do that education with the property owners. It doesn't always have to be one entity that is doing all of their together in a collaborative environment. One thing that we see in other communities and would be really worth considering here would be that business concierge concept. It's where everybody gets around the table around a particular project, and we see this with big projects a lot. We don't see it as often, or I shouldn't say it that way. We are starting to see more and more smaller projects also going through this approach, especially with historic rehabs, because every project is a little bit different and has unique challenges. So if we get everybody around the table at the beginning to talk about the project, to understand what may or may not happen when you're working with old buildings. You can maybe, take off the front, you're not quite sure what's behind that slip cover. So what are you gonna do about that? So we're gonna talk through what the steps and what processes may come up as a person interested in doing that development. If you think about these owner occupied buildings that you have or these smaller scale developers, they're going to do maybe one project or two projects in their life because they're working on their own building and their own project. So this is not second nature to them as it is to some of those players that come in and do these projects over and over and over again. There's a lot more hand holding that needs to take place. So who can be that one person then? Once you have that power where everybody has a conversation and everybody kind of lays everything on the table, then there's one point person to really help shepherd that person through the entire process. I think that would be something that you really could benefit from in this community with some of those projects. It's creating spaces where people want to go. We've heard from in several of our meetings that there are businesses that are reaching out to people in this community and they would like to open their business in your downtown area. There are not spaces where they can go at this point. There's underutilized spaces, there's vacant spaces, there are property owners that you can't get a hold of. So what can you do to help create spaces that people have the opportunity to move into? Maybe it's an existing building that's already business that's already here and they want to grow. How can you help them find the space that they need? We need to create those spaces. They need to be attractive. A little bit of cleanup can go a long way. Weeds and a sign, does that really look that inviting? Do you want to go to a property that looks like that? Or how about a property that looks like this? This is just down the road in Atumwa. This is a vacant storefront. They put some window frames on there. They're asking the community, what do you want to see in this space? Through survey work, they identified that a men's clothing store was desired. So that's what they put in the window. They put window frames. They are helping people see this is possible. This is what we can have in our community. I think that's a great example of a tool that can be replicated in any community of any size. Letting people know what is available and where the space is. Someone needs to take ownership of that. Typically, that would be the downtown group that would have that responsibility to track and maintain that and have that relationship. They're not with the realtors. They're not taking place of a realtor. They're helping share opportunities, and then they're going to pass that information off when that point of contact comes to them. Another example of what those communication tools could look like. Again, getting the word out, social media, sharing information, and then planting the seed of what we could be doing. Structured collaboration. This is the partners and they kind of throwing names out there. We've got Greg Clinton, we've got Megan over here. Everyone has that role to play in working together. And you guys are doing that really well, or we would not be here. You're looking to move forward. It's building that capacity to creating processes that make it simple. A part-time person can't do what a full-time person can do. We need to build that capacity within the community and creating the processes that make it simple and everyone understands and knows what the line is, get the project done within your community, will really help move the needle on those projects. And the biggest thing of creating, once you get a space built, is also the what are you going to do to help keep that space built? Providing that business support and helping that business nurture them through the startup phase is also a key component. Because you don't want to have turnover in your properties either. So it's not a complete cycle once that door is open and you do the ribbon cutting. There's continued support for the businesses that are already here. There's all kinds of options that we do. We're going to have links to a lot of these tools and resources in our presentation. And these are just 3 examples of toolkits and guides that we have, again, to just really help extend the capacity for the staff that needs.
So that was people planning the process. Thanks, Carol. Next, we're going to talk about the buildings. One of your really major assets downtown. And they're assets in lots of different ways. They tell our story, but they're those job opportunities. They are the housing opportunities. They are the gathering space. They're the community front porch opportunity. So as we talk about buildings here today, I'm going to talk about some of the opportunities for improving property conditions. We'll talk about some design guideline resources, some incentives, we'll share really briefly a project example and then talk about some action steps that we think could happen, some quickly, some longer term, but I think are really important. First, I wanted to touch on the historic preservation side of it. So you have a wonderful history here, and there's a wonderful opportunity to build on that history and help the next generation know those stories of Clinton. I share this picture. I'm actually on the nonprofit Des Moines Heritage Trust Board of Directors. It's a group we started in 2017. We acquired the old East Des Moines Union Depot, built in 1909. It had experienced a fire at one end of it. It actually had a concrete block, a warehouse attached to it on this side. And it was filled up to here with sand. So the floor of the depot was raised up for loading and unloading produce from the TP Tomato Company into the trains that were coming through here up in like the 50s and 60s.
Is that located just across from the ABI's building right there? It's right there on that.
Not too far. It's East Fifth and just south of Court Avenue.
So you were just there for ABI.
Yeah, you were. So that's the other piece. So we restored the depot, built the event space next to it. We know when we went to acquire this, we asked for some quotes to take down the 50s brick warehouse. There had been 3 developers that already asked for quotes to demolish that depot. Well, today you're looking at what was about a $4 million project that now has 100 events a year, bringing thousands of people to the East Village and doing other things to promote and protect historic buildings and culture in the Des Moines metro area. And I share that just to give you an example of what's possible, but also tell you it's not easy. It takes work and it takes lots of partners. And really wanted to focus here on the opportunities to promote and support historic preservation. You've taken a couple of really big steps already. You've got your certified local government. You have your historic preservation commission in place. We know there's some inventory work that's already happened and more that's going to be happening. As part of that historic preservation commission, we think there's an opportunity for them to be more actively engaged with the city council and city staff, and for the city to really put more of an evidence under the historic preservation commission and the important role that they can play in the community. Everything from recommending properties for a National Register of Historic Places. Is there a role? There should be a role for the Historic Preservation Commission to provide assistance and guidance when it comes to historic building improvements. Some communities now have a process in place that the Historic Preservation Commission, the Historic Society, might be different in different communities. Could be the general public as a whole gets a notification when there's a historic building that's had a demolition permit hold. It creates a little bit of a delay in the process to say, hey, are there other alternatives? Is there somebody else who might be able to come in and restore this building? Can we move it somewhere else? Just an opportunity to have that community discussion and see if there really are other opportunities. Because once you demolish it, it's gone, you're not getting it back. I also think there's opportunities to tell those stories and working with student groups, the history club, the commission. We have several examples we could share from communities across Iowa where students are involved. Maybe it's with the synergy class. Maybe it's a class that every year they pick up a building or two and they do a deep dive into it. Signage on the building. It doesn't have to be this is on the National Register or this building was built by so-and-so. Tell the stories that happened inside there. Today's technology, you could find an old photo of the original owner. You could actually have them telling the story, do video blogs. There's all kinds of ways to really start building an even greater appreciation for the history downtown. Then also consider, and maybe the city already does this, I know you're using the 2012 International Building Code. There is a chapter there, chapter 12 specifically geared towards historic preservation or historic buildings to make it a little easier to do some of those adaptive reuses and restorations. We think you should really consider establishing a National Register of Historic Places district here. There's 64 of them across Iowa. There's over 2,000 National Register listed places in Iowa. Like I said, you've already got the commission, you've already got the certified local government, so you have a lot of those pieces in place. Because of those pieces, you can access some funding to help you with all of the work that goes into the district. the real key piece of that is if you can get that National Register District and the buildings within that, then qualify for some federal historic tax credits, which we'll talk about with the incentives here shortly. It's one quick slide here on bad ideas, and we could do a day-long thing on buildings and day-long on process, and Ben could talk for a week. But so I'm going to talk a little bit about the bad ideas. Just to bring these to your attention, because if you see them happening, or maybe you're thinking about doing something, if you're a building owner, we really want to make sure we don't lose the transparency. In other words, don't shrink down those windows, don't board the windows up. We really want to keep that building transparency. We really want to use materials that are appropriate for the style and the architecture, age of the building. If it's a brick or masonry building that hasn't been painted, we really don't want to paint that because you can really cause some moisture issues there. Obviously, we want to avoid demolition if at all possible. So these are just some of those bad ideas, bad things that we see all across the state. These are all local Iowa pictures from other assessments. We just want to bring them to your attention because there are design guidelines out there that can help with that technical assistance. It can help guide people who want to do the right thing, but maybe they just don't know how. There are other states that have them as well. Macon, Georgia has a really great one that Ben was sharing with us earlier. But this is our downtown design guide. Our downtown resource center actually has 2 design staff who put together this design guide. And it really is a great way to help preserve the integrity of the historic buildings you have. Offer training. There's Des Moines Heritage Trust Group I mentioned. We're actually doing a series of 4 trainings this summer for do-it-yourselfers, so they have a better knowledge of how to do masonry work or flooring restoration or window restoration, things like that. This gives you a little idea of just what's all inside our design guide. You can see we touch on everything from color schemes to materials to maintenance to cornices at the tops of the building to signage, all kinds of things. We also have about a 12-minute educational video out there now on proper signing and sign use. That would be a great resource. And then these design guidelines can really be extra beneficial if you have the local incentive programs. You can tie the use of the design guidelines to the incentives. So if you're going to receive funding from a local philanthropy group or the city, then we have to follow the design guidelines to make sure we protect the integrity of the historic buildings. If you put those design guidelines to use, even if it's just the training and building up of the knowledge, and people start doing just some of these smaller, quick, lower cost types of improvements, we listed as like 10 incremental, lower cost, quick, easy to do things here. And you get a bunch of them, business and building owners doing that. Before long, you can take a block that looks like the one above and it can start looking like the block below. So these are all just little pieces that come together for incremental change. So we actually have a 6-person on our team. Maya, who used to be one of our design staff and now has her own little business. She helps out with a couple of design concepts. So we took the building in the upper left, the Justice Dance, and you can see some renderings that Maya did suggesting these are things that would help bolster the overall strength of the front facade for the Justice Dance and Cheer building. Here's an example of the Gamers Castle building on the corner, which the building is in really great shape. Be great to get these windows back sometime in the near future, but even just focusing on that entrance to get a little bit more back to the original design intent of that historic building, and opening it up so you can see everybody in there who's gaming and the activities going on, because that's your key intersection of the downtown. So just a couple of examples of ways you can improve those. And why do we want to improve those vacant buildings? We had a study done back in 2013 to really look at what the cost of those vacant properties are. A vacant first floor back in 2013, our study indicated that cost the community about $200,000 plus a year. And you can see why, you're losing utility, you're losing property tax, losing sales tax, you're losing the benefits from having those employees in there, the services supporting those businesses. Same thing with the upper story. The upper story is probably losing the city 20 to 40,000 a year by lost rent, again, lost utilities, maintenance, those people buying and shopping things in the downtown. So you put all that together, having a building sitting vacant downtown, it's probably costing you easily 250,000 a year. Those are 13-year-old numbers. We actually have new numbers to be released here very soon. That's what we focus on upper story. So here's some upper stories projects from around Iowa. Just to give you some examples of the really cool spaces that are out there. We'll talk a little bit later about how you might expose people to the upper story potential here in Clinton. I share this example with Bonnie High. Directly as far west from here as you can go, straight across, 1,600 people, 2 block downtown. They have upper story housing in every building but one that can support upper story housing. This is because it doesn't have access to it. You have to go through the middle of the hardware store to get there. So a little town of 1,600. Not only do they have upper story housing in all of the buildings that can support it, they also have redone nearly 30 of their front building facades in Little Woodbine. It's because Woodbine takes the attitude of, they don't say no, or we can't do that, or try. The attitude is always, we can do that. We're not sure how, but we'll figure it out. And I could talk a whole day, but I would encourage you to go check out Woodbine. They are a star.
I ask a question, please. Does anybody else, do insurance companies drown on having a first floor building?
Sometimes it has, I think that has been a challenge in some places.
Some places, yeah. But there are ways around that.
There are ways around it. I think there are people who have got insured and who insures that. Sometimes it depends on what the first floor use really is sometimes versus the other story.
The good news is there are millions of Americans that live upstairs. So it's not like it's something that's foreign. There are different things that obviously, you know how insurance works. It's like they will analyze every factor and figure out different things. Technology is working on our favor there. Everything from fire detection, construction technology on fire retardant materials and things like that. So although it always, I think insurance will always be a complexity in anything we do. It's definitely an issue that you can work alongside, and plenty of communities in this state have kind of made it work. So, but great question.
We've had projects we've invested in probably at least a couple hundred communities, I would say, upper story, all across Iowa. It's definitely happening. It's definitely doable. But it's going to take some work. It's going to take us work community. It's going to take that streamlined development process that Carol touched on. It really helps to have willing building owners. If the building owners aren't willing, maybe you can find some building owners who are willing, and we can make that transfer happen. It does help to have a good, knowledgeable developer, mentor, somebody who's been through the process. The experienced design team also, I think, can be really helpful keeping the cost in check. Because they've been there, done that, and they know what they're going to run into with historic buildings a lot of times. And the same thing on the construction side. And we'll take multiple sources of funding. There's lots of them. The upper story, one of them I showed in Woodbine, when we had the tour, the person that developed the project had this little chalkboard up there, and I thought it was kind of interesting, showing the stack of funding and how they made the project happen. Here's why the incentives are important. If you look at the current potential value versus the current value of these buildings, particularly where we're only using a half of the third of the building, and what it's going to cost to renovate it. Unfortunately, a lot of times that doesn't pencil out very well, and the bankers don't like to see that picture. So that's why we need to have that investment or incentive piece at the top there to fill that gap to bring the project to reality. So in the long run, you've got that additional future value. And I say this to the city council folks out there, the city leadership. I know times are tough, they're always tough, and they're probably getting tougher with Iowa's property tax changes. So we need to figure out how can we leverage the infrastructure that's already in place to get a greater return on that investment. These downtown buildings is one of the best ways to do that. These incentives can come in a variety of manners. There are ways to get local participation in these projects, and it almost always takes local participation to make these projects work. It can be in a variety of manners, could be grants, can be revolving loan funds. I think in Clinton County, there are already about 6 existing revolving loan funds, a lot of them through the utilities, particularly the co-ops. There's grants, there's tax abatement, there's tax rebates. There's just lots of ways to do it. I'll use Knoxville. Knoxville is probably third the size of Clinton. Knoxville had issues with a lot of their downtown buildings, sheet metal slip covers over most of them. They made a commitment, they were going to revitalize downtown, fix up the buildings, and they started committing $300,000 a year to help support that reinvestment. Clinton, over the last 6 years, has spent at least $3 million on demolition, and it was borrowed, so I'm not counting interest. Probably spending another $100,000 to $200,000 this year, and you're probably spending in excess of $500,000 just mowing and maintaining all those vacant properties from demolition. So think about a different approach and investing in something with some better long-term return. Just also a note, there are some tax credits and tax deduction incentives federally for making buildings accessible, helping with those elevators, ramps, things like that. Then lastly, I just want to share an example because this is a project that was already identified in some of the university bylaws in the city. So we just took this because it existed and we had some numbers. It's the old Woolworth building in the corner and it's the Brown Shoe Fit store next to it. And they ran some numbers. These numbers are about 3 years old. I think the numbers might be a little low, but I'm going to use their numbers. I just took and applied. There's a workforce housing tax credit, state historic tax credit, redevelopment tax credit, community catalyst, upper story housing. Those are all incentive programs within our agency. There's that federal historic tax credit I talked about, if you could get the building listed or the district created. Not even counting any local incentives. I mean, there's a possibility to maybe cut your project in half. For illustrative purposes, don't take it to the bank, but just give you something to think about. Plus, you're in an opportunity zone, you're in a new markets tax credit. So there are all kinds of opportunities here. It's just going to take some work and some skill and accessing the resources to figure out how you layer this together to make the projects happen. So here's the action item we would suggest. The investment group. Is there a pool of folks in Clinton County or Clinton Fulton that want to pool their monies together to invest on projects? Maybe one of us can't do it, but maybe a bunch of us can. Jefferson's 72 women came together to create the Why Not Us group. They have been restoring buildings and putting new businesses in them all around downtown Jefferson.
Did I type out
Why not us?
why not us?
That is a typo. That's the why not us?
I was for either way.
Tap your windows. Carol already talked about that, so I'm going to slip by that. Here's an example though of Jefferson where they were recruiting community ideas and what do you want to see in this space. We talked about the benefits and the assets of that building. Same thing that Carol just showed you. And one of the things we talked about was being rent ready. Do a community rent ready building kind of an approach. This was a bookstore in Michigan. There was one in Mount Vernon, Iowa, same thing. The community came out, rolled 300 people, moved 9,100 books from old store to new location in 2 hours. Involve the community, get that quick win, and invite us back because we could talk about this and then go into much more detail if we just had a dedicated session of buildings and incentives.
Right. I want to start by recognizing the work that's already being done. Throughout our visit, we've heard from every group how great the events are. The music on Avenue and Wine Walk for Rob and every meeting
So we want to definitely give you credit for that. You're bringing people together, you're creating that excitement. People are really enjoying it. You're showcasing the best of downtown. But those events also don't happen by accident. They require a lot of time, volunteer work, coordination, fundraising, marketing, and community partnerships. So I definitely want to applaud downtown Clinton, and everyone involved that, in creating those events. But the recommendations that I'm going to go through are ways that you can build on your successes. This section is really about using everything that you have available and creating that vibrant downtown economy, not just on event days, but every day, every season, and every year. Events are just one piece of the puzzle, but so are attractive storefronts, which we've heard about, welcoming public spaces, which Peyton's going to talk about, upper floor housing, business promotions, placemaking, partnerships, community collaborations. The most successful downtowns truly understand that the events are not the destination, they're the invitation. And they're inviting the people to come into downtown, and then what happens next is the economic impact. So are the visitors staying for dinner? Are they discovering someplace that they've never been before? Do they come back next weekend? Do they begin to see downtown as a place that they want to invest in? And creating that kind of downtown isn't the responsibility of just downtown Clinton, it's the responsibility through everybody, the businesses, property owners, nonprofits, artists, communities, organizers, volunteers, and all the residents. So that might be with signature events. It could be trivia night, could be history walks, bike ride ending in downtown, pop-up markets, or simply inviting storefronts. The question we're asking throughout that I'm asking throughout this section is how do we take what Clinton is already doing well and turn it into that momentum year round for that more vibrant and stronger downtown with stronger businesses. Downtown Clinton is already hosting events that people love. So the next opportunity is to maximize the economic impact on those events. Instead of just measuring the attendance, are you looking at how many people walked inside of a business? How many people made a purchase? How many people discovered a business that they've never been to before? Not every attraction needs to be, or activation needs to be a large event. Some of the most effective programs are simple, low lift events, like cash mobs, where you select a business and on one night for a couple hours for a period of time, say, hey, I would invite the entire community to come here and spend $20. You're making an impact on that business. People are going to discover a business they may not be aware that has been open for 10 years. And they're really easy to organize and launch, and obviously you're helping your businesses. The goal is simple. Every event, large or small, should leave downtown businesses stronger than they were before. One of the biggest opportunities for downtown Clinton is realizing that downtown Clinton Alliance doesn't have to do it all. In fact, some of the best downtown programming happens when organizations and businesses simply help connect the dots. Think about the incredible partners that are in this room and that you already work with. Maybe reach out to a local biking group and then coordinate with the brewery to create a ride. Maybe they start in Fulton and they're riding, or Comanche, and then they ride into downtown and then they're spending an evening. We've had a lot of success with that in other communities. You wouldn't have to organize the ride. You just connect the dots, connect the people to create those things and make those things happen. Same idea applies to the businesses. Encourage the restaurants and the bars and coffee shops to host trivia, or maybe like live music and game nights or tasting events. These don't have to be big, huge, large events. They can just be something that brings people downtown on a slow kind of always like a Monday or a Tuesday. Another simple idea is to add into a potential event you guys already have is bounce back dollars. So maybe during an event, you have businesses handing out a $10 coupon that says, thank you so much for stopping in tonight. Come back in February when it's really slow and spend this $10. So it's encouraging them to come back for that second visit. Let's see. And then, look to your community partners. So you've got a lot of great organizations in downtown and near downtown. The Historical Society, how can you partner with them or help them to host like historic walks? Or the Children's Museum to do family-friendly activities that are right in, like out on the street so everyone can visit the businesses before or after that activity. The key is building a shared calendar. There's a whole lot of calendars, so people don't always know what's going on. So if you can pull that all together and have it in one place, so everyone knows what is happening in your community. So when everyone comes together and everyone just contributes a little bit, it's really going to make an impact on throughout the entire year. And the results will be that your downtown feels active every month without putting all of the responsibility on one organization. Let's see. One of the best ways to increase your return on your events is to make sure every business has an opportunity to participate, even if they're not on Fifth Avenue. For example, businesses outside of Fifth Avenue, maybe invite them to table at the event, or encourage them to be a vendor at the Lions Farmers Market to really draw people from all parts of the community that maybe aren't visiting downtown and aren't familiar with their businesses currently. Inside of downtown, be encouraging those businesses to think about the fact that they have a couple thousand people right outside their front door on Music on Avenue. Is it decorate, maybe they can't be open, but is it making sure there's some information about their business so that people will come back? But encouraging them to be open and participate with attractive window signs, say, hey, come on in and check this out, offer specials. And themed things that go with whatever the event is. Exclusive promotions, maybe they have a refreshment that they can give. The goal is really to make all of your downtown feel more connected. Whether someone comes for the concert or a market, they should be discovering the business. And they should feel excited when they leave. There's always something new to explore.
Question for you.
Yeah.
What's the sweet spot for hours of operation? I know it depends on your market, your audience, who's shopping where and when, but I find that some of our downtown retailers are closing their doors at 5 or 6. Perfect example, Brown Shoe Fit. My daughter wanted a pair of Birkenstocks. I worked a little bit past 5 that day. She called me and she's like, we gotta go now. I'm like, why? I got some time. She's like, no, they close at 6. And I thought that was interesting that 6 o'clock on the music and I'm not even out of the office yet. I'm there. It's like some
This is gonna be actually your wheelhouse, but there are some data sources out there that can really tell you when the visits are happening in your community. The town I was in a few weeks ago, kind of focused on Friday, Saturday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, we ran the data. And Monday night was way above as far as the people visiting their town. Like Monday was like twice every other night of the week, but nobody was open on Monday.
Yeah, I think 60 some odd % of retail purchases happen between 6 PM and 9 PM in America. The issue with that is traditionally downtowns have sent the message to the retail market that they're not available. So what it takes to transition that is a concerted and thoughtful, but also strategic effort. We typically tell people it takes at least 3 years to change market trends. We typically recommend a once a month with the idea of growing into kind of an extended night a week. And, so there's an incremental strategy. We will be glad to share with you kind of a white paper on extended hours approaches. Not a Clinton problem, universal problem, but it's also, it's just a dynamic where when you have businesses that are owned by individuals, they also, I don't know, like to see their family. So there's that kind of hard middle ground, but yeah, we can share some info on that.
What's that?
Placer.
Placer.
Yeah. Placer will tell you hot spots. It'll tell you days of the week. It'll tell you where they're coming from. And you can start to use actual people movement data to help be real strategic about what that.
It's a great tool.
Yeah, it is.
One of the things that's coming out next year for the state, or already this year, is a credit card based tracking system, because arrival list and some of the cell phone tracking stuff, the travel live, we can't use anymore. So we're actually gonna have a more robust,
Transactional tracking.
was to track all of that. So.
It's great.
Another thing to remember is as you're working with the businesses to experiment with this, like Ben said, it could take 3 years to see that change. Be consistent. Don't be like, well, there's one here that I'm gonna close. There's nothing more frustrating to a visitor, especially not a town visitor, that sees what your posted hours are, and then they come in here closed. I saw a long post about my community while I've been here, though,
That's Waterloo, right?
Yes.
On the opposite side of Andy's question, he's looking for the sweet spot, what's the sour spot? Based on the type of, product that you're selling, I mean, is the sour spot for a shoe store, as he brings up, is the sour spot from 8 to 10 in the morning, we don't wanna be open. And you want to be open from 5 to 7.
Right.
Or if it's a, insurance operation, do we want to be open from 7 to 9 in the morning for sure? And then we close down at 4 because nobody's going to come in.
One of the biggest trends I've seen in the communities that I've worked in across the country is small business owners are actually starting to explore dynamics where they are closing during the day and reopening. So we're seeing retailers that actually realize nothing's happening from 2 o'clock until 6 o'clock. So they're actually closing and then they're reopening and staying open until 9. And when you have a small business, when you have that flexibility, you can start to explore that. The placer data and the transaction data paired with typical market trends, we can probably give a little bit of overarching purchase data trends, but category by category, how many people are buying shoes at 8 a.m.? Probably not a ton. It's a great point. When my wife and I owned a downtown retail, we figured out, we started opening at 10. 10 wasn't a time that made sense for us. 11 did. And because we were opening at 11, it made it easier for us to stay open until 8. And, so you're asking all the right questions, but also having it all in that context of understanding that that person on the other side of that business is a person and they have obligations and they have lives. And so having those thoughtful conversations and being able to have really good concerted efforts to move that needle.
Oh, yep.
I just want to follow up real quick before I forget her comment about Lamar's. Mark Gall, it would be that they're city president of Tammy Johnson, except that they not involved in code enforcement. That's not, it's more beyond that. How did you work with the economic development folks there? And that's been a key point at City Hall, not the city administrator, but the community, like I said, basically it'd be Tammy Johnson, but not saying you're over code enforcement. And then what really triggered a lot, Lamar struggled with, I think, some of the same things that Clinton does. Either you're not quite big enough or you're closer to bigger markets. And the for-profit developers say, I'd rather go to other markets. And Wells Blue Bunny set up technically a series of for-profit entities, but they have a mentality that says, if we break even, we've accomplished our goal. And Walmart opened up and they just outside of their downtown and they couldn't get anybody to come in across. And Mr. Wells put in, 8 or 9 small retail spaces, priced them accordingly because the objective was to get it done and make it happen. If we break even or make a penny rather than, 8% return on investment, mission accomplished. They were able to price it, got it done and helped. And all that, Andy still can hear me, but the key to that was making that flow through that person from the business community. And in Clinton's case, we couldn't get any for-profit developer to say, yeah, Clinton's a market, I want to come in and put it in housing at that point.
Well, I think that's part of why we're here and sharing
Yep,
this.
exactly. And that's where getting community leaders to have kind of, we set up a nonprofit to say, we'll develop housing. 38 lots sold in the first week out of 41, and made $180,000, turn that into a business park that pre-COVID had 400 employees. Not enough of a community to get a for-profit, but you get other entities that say, yeah, I'll get involved, and we'll do it in the context through the local chamber of commerce and make that happen. That's what they've done in Lamar's, and you're absolutely right. That can happen here with the right role, Andy.
And I think we're gonna have some great opportunities for you guys to discuss as a community and look at. Just to keep things going though, you guys are doing a great job activating some of those other spaces as well. You've been starting to do those pocket parks and revitalizing those alleys. Those are great things. We're gonna hear more about those from Peyton. Now, I don't know. I'm not a public speaker, guys, but I'm.
Great job.
So, the next opportunity to think about is those vacant spaces, or those vacant buildings, and how can they become part of the experience even before they are occupied? So one idea could be to host like a downtown opportunities, tour, so where you're taking people into those vacant spaces and invite developers, invite entrepreneurs that might be looking for a space to use their imagination. I was in a training, and one of the speakers was telling a story how they went to a community and they were hosting an event like this. A community member came because they were curious and they wanted to see inside the building. They really didn't care about anything else. They're just like, I've never been there. And they got this idea and they shared it during the tour, like, hey, this should be, I don't know, I'm in a yoga studio or something. By the end of the tour, they were inspired, they were excited. And I think within the year, that actual person opened a yoga studio in that space that they had gotten inspired by. So you just never know where your next business is going to come from. So having those tours and showcasing those spaces and letting people use those their imaginations are great opportunities. Sometimes people just need an opportunity to see the space to imagine what's next. The tour itself could become a fundraiser that could then, the ticket sales could help fund things like the vacant windows. So Carol shared one, Josh shared one, here's some other ideas of ways you can fill those vacant storefront windows so they don't look like they're just empty rundown buildings. It creates some excitement. Every storefront, occupied or not, can contribute to downtown Clinton's story and move forward movement. And it just gets people excited for what's on the horizon.
I'm assuming it's much like selling a home, it's important to probably stage a commercial building as well. So before you open up to the public, dead birds, things like that. Probably should be removed.
Probably have those removed before you take the tour.
Well, I'm serious.
You can show them for I guess, was this, if you can, this.
Yeah.
I mean, I've walked through commercial buildings that were listed and I was just blown away by, there was nothing cleaned, I mean.
Yeah.
And it had been closed for a very long time.
And that's something that's hard for people to imagine too, is there's people that I know I want to open a business, I'm ready, but they walk into a space and they don't have that imagination. So if you have people on your team or within the community that can help them imagine what that space can be, that helps support with their process as well. So talking about investing time where it creates the greatest impact. So one thing we encourage every downtown organization to do is regularly evaluate whether your events are achieving the outcomes that you are wanting. Time, volunteers, funding are all limited resources. So it's important to invest strategically. One recommendation would be to create an ROI, a return on investment matrix, after every event. Look at the successes, and figure out how you want them to be measured. Look at business participation, sponsorship performance, your income versus expense, community feedback, financial results, media exposure, and whether the event achieved its intended goals. It's also really important to look at the economic impact of these events. As the downtown businesses, did the sales increase? Did you see any new customers? Did the visitors stay and shop, or did they go out to eat after or before? And are you experiencing some repeat visits following the event? These conversations can help determine whether the event is truly bringing people to downtown and helping the downtown economic impact. An ROI evaluation and economic impact report can really tell you what's working, what can be improved, and whether maybe it's time to take the emotion out of an event and it's time to retire it and move on to something else. Few small adjustments can sometimes completely change the impact of an event as well. Sometimes it's time to retire it. Using this type of evaluation will allow you to really make data-driven, decisions about events and continually strengthen your programming. And then I really want you guys to build upon your successes. Remember, none of these ideas have to happen all at once. The goal is to build on the great work that's already happening and really think of it as phased. Some ideas are simple. Some might be intimidating, but things like a downtown business event toolkit. So you're providing the businesses that are participating with the graphics and social media posts that they just have to copy and paste and drop in for that consistent branding. And so everyone knows what the event is and who's tied to the event. A single downtown event calendar, like I mentioned, it's build excitement over time. So doing something with those vacant windows can create a friendly competition among businesses. Like for best window display, come up with a prize for them, or if there's some sort of giveaway as part of the event, having them compete against each other a little bit. Everyone loves to win, so they're gonna enjoy some competition. You guys have a business incubator, but sometimes that's still not the right fit for everyone thinking about starting a business. So work with your entrepreneurs. Is there like a pop-up program that you can do during the holiday season to create more retail spaces? Work with the downtown property owners. It'll give them their opportunity to be in a space and test out having a storefront on a more temporary basis. Sometimes your events, you should look at and consider having them serve as fundraisers that could support the Alliance to create some extra income. It could be specifically to raise money for a specific project that you guys want to do as well. I know a lot of communities will hold an event to pay for their flowers every year. So then that takes that away from sponsorship aspects as well. Ultimately, your success is going to be measured by the number of events on the calendar. It's going to be creating a downtown where there's always a reason to visit. And because we're short on time, I think that's why.
I have more questions. Who's next, Ben?
Ben.
No.
Ben's got a lot.
Peyton's next.
Oh, no, it's Peyton's next. Sorry.
Yeah.
We'll save about 20 minutes at the end for additional questions.
I know we're not lying.
We're gonna now talk about something we heard quite frequently, connectivity. This is more just talked about collaboration and different ways that we can incorporate businesses collaborating and how to be visible. That was a big thing we talked about, just covered some of that. This is more physical space and place connectivity. Jeff highlighted a lot of the key amenities, the river. Clinton has very highlightable history and businesses, architecture, and trying to figure out how to bring people into this core on Fifth Avenue for downtown, but also get downtowners that are there to go visit the river and to go look at the troll. And so after hearing that need and assessing, we have some 3 priorities: connecting downtown to the community assets and the ones we just discussed. And here's some great photos. You guys have so much art, music, and how can we do that? How can we draw people in? So activating some of the existing infrastructure and spaces within downtown, like the hardscape. I'm a landscape architect and an urban designer, so I'm thinking about your streetscape, your plantings, much like the architecture needing a refresh. So does your infrastructure, your light poles, your plantings, your alleyways, and there's already so much good work being done to try to highlight those. And I'll try not to, but so looking at Clinton, yes, I did that myself.
I was gonna say this.
There's all of these amenities and we're just trying to pull them in, and a medium for that is wayfinding. And I know that there's already a wayfinding study underway, signage is coming, and that is key. So that's so good to hear. We were really happy to find that out. And being thoughtful about where those wayfinding elements and where those placemaking elements in art are thoughtfully located to pull people in. You already have a master plan completed. don't let some of that good information sit on the shelf. There are intersections that are key to connecting to the river. Going straight down Fifth, that's fine. How can we have somebody that is walking along the river on the trail, coming from maybe the park or visiting the troll? How can we have them see vertical pillars of placemaking or art or lighting to draw them in? So use some of those already identified locations, and we'll get into the meat of this in the forward, but in a nutshell. So I'm gonna start running through a bit of the tools that are scalable and also pretty immediate. You can involve the students to start planting. You've got a lot of mulch, and that's an effort, and I see you, and I see, and probably you need to spray for weeds when you have that much mulch. Let's fill those planting beds up. Again, just like the architecture, the hardscape and the greenery need a refresh. They need that lip gloss too. So, you can see even in some of these before and afters, the impact that green can have. That already looks, we didn't touch the facades. But that is something we will get into, with wayfinding as well. Being able to have the seasonal interest instead of dead mulch beds in the winter, having some of those ornamentals that are frozen in time, and yes, they're brown, but they're ornamental. Grasses, even, it doesn't need to be new annuals every year. It can be hardy perennials, natives, and that will last you a long time. Okay, trying so hard not to yell, but another refresh in your infrastructure, the lighting. And this is darkness and safety, wanting things to be bright, welcoming. It's another way to draw people in. And also give some of that artistic character you already have. It doesn't take much. Twinkle lights. And that, when elevated, there's not as much risk as like something in your plant beds that you can get kicked over. I know there's concerns with that. So here's just a few before and afters as well, and how just planting, and you don't have to get new lights. You can refinish outdated light poles. You can sandblast them, repaint them, and get a new fixture. That's all it takes. It doesn't have to be a complete redo. And as far as streetscapes go, I kudos the streetscape. The trees are gorgeous. Having that many, it's called an LA when you have 2 trees on the side of a road and they provide beautiful canopy. That is hard to come by. So I'll keep going. But with that canopy and with some really simple, I worked in another community. We went to Walmart and we got the globes and hung them from trees. That impact screams, that's an artful, alive, nighttime community. It's not unsafe. People are there, they're moving, they must be. So just a few things to consider here. Okay, so again, it's scalable. It might not be every tree. It might be every other. It might just be at those front identified intersections where they're really visible. It doesn't have to, you can scale it up. I think even just a little bit gets people excited, and then you can do more. All right, and then wayfinding. I will say visiting, you have this gorgeous architecture and there are businesses. You kind of have to go peek to see if there's anybody inside. But a real quick tell that will need to be coordinated and with the Historic Society to make sure you're respecting the integrity of the architecture. But signage, when I stand right now, it is flat. I cannot see if there's any business signs or what's open, and something as simple as this, and I could collaborate with your planning study that's already got signage families identified, can give somebody that's coming to go to the dance studio, oh, I didn't know that there's like a bracelet maker or a bakery or a coffee shop.
I think that's something our building code needs to address, because I believe those signs are not allowed.
They are.
If they are conceptual.
Yeah. Every building's allowed one front facing and one projecting. So, yeah.
Back to that ordinance review and misconceptions and misunderstandings.
Yep, forget what chapter, the gentleman referenced it earlier. Yes, I love this.
We saw the L, and never read past L.
Yeah, you should have gotten to the P section.
Those are the same sculptures that have been up for 26 years. Any thoughts regarding the fact that those same sculptures have been there for 26 years?
I think with key characteristics in a community like those, step one, phase one, are some of these scalable, smaller enhancements around them. We were just saying it'd be cool to see water coming out of these awesome sculptures, but they do have water features around them. One step at a time, I would take these bite-sized pieces of intersection enhancements, but you can, and that's a good segue, I'm glad you asked that right now. Intersections and ground plane and vertical gateways. So yes, right now there are gateways of sorts at intersections with these sculptures that are very cute, nature-based, and I do think there's more opportunity to maybe keep, those are more internal. As you get to the river, where you have that median that is supposed to guide you towards the river, I see that intersection and ones like this as an opportunity for vertical gateway markers. And I can be simple pillars, laser cut metal. That's all it takes. So just in a phased approach, you can start with these little things, but then also evolve to bigger gateway markers.
I know downtowns that do refreshing of those sculptures every year,
Yeah.
and they play that into a big Saturday event. Hey, come on downtown, be here. We're going to unveil 5 new sculptures.
Yeah.
And it becomes a Saturday reason. And to Andy's point, maybe you time it into the right time of the day so that they'll be there and then go shopping.
Yes, and get students involved. Again, the synergy, am I saying that right? They are so involved in a way that I've never seen in a community, and they are in the downtown. So anyways, that would be another way that we could get them involved. And I'm just gonna keep rolling because I know we're tight on time. You are already doing this so well. You are identifying alleyways that can connect with students during the day. If there are spaces to sit, they will sit and they will hang out. You are currently missing those lingering moments for mom and dad. Where do I go sit? Where do I wait? Something that was mentioned earlier that I'll reiterate now, being very thoughtful about where these alleyways are. You have a handful of them, and some of them are identified in that master plan. And being aware of adjacent empty buildings with business opportunities for a cafe, new restaurants, diverse dining, things that we heard were craved here. That's why people leave town to go get something other than Mexican. If you have an adjacent restaurant, you can have outdoor dining and really simple elements like lighting and more art to build on your already strong culture oriented towards art and the murals. I've also seen people put projectors and watch movies out there. You can have those high enough and won't be fussed with. They make outdoor grade movie projectors that you could easily utilize.
The outdoor seating, I should know this, but what's our code say about that? You guys see anything on there?
I didn't see anything prohibited.
I just know from the past, back in the day when Jude got involved, Vinnie's wanted to do outdoor seating beyond her patio. She had to have, it could be temporary, but some kind of fencing.
A lot of that's with alcohol consumption.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the city writes that.
I would say on the whole, something we discussed quite a bit, do not shy away from trying. See how far, and then dig. Because most times you'll find there's a way around everything. May not be a word, but everything is figureoutable. You just gotta dig. Okay, I'm huffing it. So this goes more on that expand your dining opportunities. There are delivers. You have a unique scenario where your car or your pedestrian walkway adjacent to the buildings is elevated. And there are ADA crossings. But I do see some opportunities, and especially where there's these pavers that's outside of the car, which you have to keep clear so people can move through. or even just bistro tables. So as businesses come, the more people you see outside enjoying, to the point that was made yesterday, the more people are sitting and going, oh, I didn't know that was there. I should go there tomorrow. So we hear you. I thought that was great. And then, okay, business activation, you guys, music on the app, I'm coming back. I went all the way to Appleton, Wisconsin for Mile of Music because it was the same energy. And downtown Des Moines, we're not popping up. We'll pop up for soccer games on the big screen out on Court Avenue, but we're not doing this. I would go boogie all the time. But scalable business opportunities for those that are struggling with the things we've talked about, with getting into the old architecture. You can have a pop-up, you can have food trucks, and even in that alleyway rendering, I didn't call it out, but should. Even with the parking, you can pull up a food truck and have them post up there for the day. How many students would run over for lunch? How many business owners would come through for so-and-so's specialty? Just food for thought. You can scale your business and you can have opportunities, advantage of these big opportunities. And also, I tossed another Peyton special hand sketch in there. The layout for that, where do food trucks go? You've got the space. That middle road, bike lane, flank it, centralize that tent. I know you, right now, I was thinking they probably put those tents there because they don't have to move them. They can just stay, less maintenance, totally get it. But when you do centralize that performance area, both sides of the street can then become seating. Quick pop-up, like wedding table, bar height, you don't need chairs. Affordable ways to just take advantage of that whole space. If you're closing a road, close it and temporarily pop up these tables and centralize the core amenity, give people a place to sell and give people a place to dance. All right.
Good job, Peyton. All right, buckle up, Buttercup. We got 60 slides in 6 minutes. We're wrapping this up. Hopefully you're starting to get excited. I want to hit on a couple things, start out with some numbers. We always dig into statistics, dig into demographics. Inflow, outflow, you guys grow by about 800 people every day. You've got 6,300 people that leave the city to go to work. You got about 7,000 that come into the city to go to work. There is a lot of cross traffic over the river that is unique to you guys. That's not typically what we see when we've got a river town. That river is the Great Wall of China. You have a more connected market there. The jobs that come in are stretching in that northeast to southwest corridor. The people that live here are not going northeast to go to work. They're primarily going southwest towards Quad Cities. Looking at industry distribution, about 20%, 1 in 5 jobs is manufacturing related. That's not a scary number. Once it starts to get in the 30s, that's almost like too much manufacturing. You've got good industry diversity here. Household values sitting at 118. You can see the whole thing is kind of slid towards the slightly less affluent in relation to the national average. Rent versus own, I talked about this earlier, 69%, really, really good, solid number. Household incomes, again, you've got everything relatively on par until you get to the high 180s, and then you start to drop off. So you're just not having that kind of higher level compared to national average. Commute time, 18.9 minutes average for the people that live in the city commuting out. We did dig into retail leakage. If you're not familiar with this, we look at the demand. That's what the consumers in the geography spend. We compare it to what the stores in the same geography sell. We looked at 5-minute, 10-minute, 15-minute drive time from the center of Fifth Ave. What we're seeing is the sexiest slides on the planet. This shows you every single sales category, what the consumers are spending, what the stores are selling, and whether you're leaking or gaining. You are selling $675 million worth of retail goods in a 15-minute drive time. The consumers are buying $780 million. So every single year, $106 million that your people earn and your people spend, they have to spend away. Now, that is equalized for online sales. A lot of people are like, yeah, but online, everyone is shopping online. So these comparisons are equalized across the board. I've made a list of key categories for you guys to focus in on based off your retail leakage. $24 million in clothing. That is a huge, huge number. We're seeing really, really positive categories that make a ton of sense for our character districts in Clinton. So, and I'm saying Lyons, downtown, like all the places that have that smaller, more traditional square footage. We dug deep and we tried to make sure that we identified your unique problems. And we found none. Every problem that you guys got, other people got. Dealing with the same stuff that the other communities are. So let's talk first about demolition, okay? You guys, you have a land value in your downtown of around, we got like tax exempted, almost 13 million, land value of 30 million. Your land value compared to peer communities of peer populations is about a quarter its value. Now, when you look at all of these structures, and then you also look at all of that kind of surface area land, we've got to preserve density. We have to preserve these structures. We have to take care of these buildings that carry with them potential value that will never be replaced if demolished. We need to start treating our buildings more like cars. You know, you walk up on an 80-year-old Porsche that hasn't been driven in 45 years, that the windshield is broken, the tires are flat, the paint is gone, and not a single person on the planet says that should go to the junkyard. Let's scrap it. But we do that with our buildings. We've got to change that mindset. The average cost of demolition is between $18,000 and $40,000 for a smaller residential structure. That number escalates in our downtown districts. You guys are borrowing on average $500,000 a year to knock things down. So let's talk about this spectrum. We're willing to spend $500,000 borrowing to take it from bad to empty. And then we say, we don't have any money to help you take okay to great. It is okay for us to distribute those resources along that spectrum, okay? Doesn't mean you abandon it altogether, but the fact of the matter is that being able to distribute your resources, the community deserves great. And if all we're doing is continuing to battle the worst end of the spectrum, but never helping people to achieve the great, it is going to continue on the mindset that great can't happen here. So we've got to instill that inspiration. A couple of things I want you to think about with space. One of the biggest trends right now, these numbers are a little bit old, but they still work for averages. When you look at a traditional historic space, there are not a lot of modern retailers that are just going to be able to turnkey fit into a traditional storefront. Right now, at that average, you're looking at, say, $1,800 a month for a 1,200, 1,800 square foot space. If we start to think about breaking those up into micro retail units where we have back spaces, that back space can be office. That back space in some circumstances can be ADA accessible residential. Make sure your codes allow for that. And then you start to create these smaller storefront spaces that are achievable and maintainable for modern retail. Why is that important? As a person walks down the sidewalk, they don't ever judge how deep your store is, but they absolutely feel it when a storefront is closed. And when you walk past 3 vacant storefronts, the entire district starts to feel dead. Sometimes, depending on how you work it out, you can even create these 10 or 15-foot micro retail bays that you can afford to give away to somebody. We did a parking garage in Greenville, South Carolina that had artist studios along the Riverwalk because we wanted a parking garage on the Riverwalk. So thinking creatively about those dynamics. Next up, let's talk about parking. In America, we have all been brainwashed by this mindset of the Walmart infinite parking capacity. We got three problems in parking. We have parking capacity problems, we have parking management problems, and parking awareness problems. I know that some of you will not trust me on this, but you do not have a parking capacity problem. You absolutely have a consumer motivation problem. You have a mindset that the consumers that are willing to go to downtown today deserve to park immediately in front of their store. Now, when you look at your downtown, this is Fifth Ave from First to Third, okay? Let's overlay your Walmart. Let's say that we have to pick up cat food, milk, and some bug spray. We literally are going to walk all the way down both blocks twice just with a standard Walmart. It's all about mindset. So you've got to preserve those assets, and we have to know that our goal is to achieve destination mindset where our consumers carry with it a higher level of motivation. This is all your part. There's a lot. When you look at buildings to blank space, there's a whole lot of blue in this. So this idea that we need to continue to knock down more and make this thing more blue, I have never, ever talked to someone who said, you know what, I just visited the cutest town. You know what I love most? Ample parking. It's just not the way we work. There are a lot of things that we can do to combat this. Oftentimes our business owners, they're the ones that are having to hear the complaints. The people come in there, I couldn't find a parking space. They're literally in the business complaining about how they couldn't find a parking space. And we simply don't have a mechanism to respond to. So we started creating these little parking cards. It's literally just a business card, print thousands of these things for $100, give them to the business owners, have your highlighted parking in your districts. And when somebody comes in and says that, it's like, sorry, you had a difficult time. Here's all the different public parking that we have available. Hopefully it's a little easier for you next time. And we're so glad you made it this time. We're going to try to make it worth your while. You know, we work in places like State College, Pennsylvania, where they have parking issues. They built a gigantic parking garage and people didn't park in and still complained about no parking. So we had to get a little cheeky, you know, there's nowhere to park in downtown except for our 2,037 spaces. Sometimes you have to hit the misconceptions with the reality. We even went through, they have a little bit more aggressive management system than you guys do. The 2-hour signs with no enforcement. That's an interesting approach, but, you know, kind of going through, and I'm not saying that you need to play harder ball with this, but we do, as some communities have started to move more towards things like digital platforms and things like that, the idea of courtesy tickets is something that a lot of communities are exploring. The idea that a parking space can actually serve a different purpose at a different part of the day. Having circulation and the amount of time you can stay in the space change over the course of the day and the days of the week. Everything doesn't have to be only 2 hours. If you have a pharmacy where you know elderly customers need to get in and get their medicine, you can give them a couple 15-minute spaces. And if you got a salon where you got somebody that needs to get a good cut and color, they need more than 2 hours to make it set, right? So understanding how to make all those dynamics work. Guerrilla wayfinding signage. You guys are getting ready to put an amazing public infrastructure in wayfinding. I want to see you explore this low-cost, kind of conversational, pedestrian and bike-oriented guerrilla wayfinding system. This can be one of the best ways, especially from a biking standpoint, to connect Lions to downtown, to Riverview Park. All of those components, I think, is going to be real important for us. Now, let's talk about pedestrian malls. Had a couple of people over the course of the past couple of days talk about pedestrian malls. Since 1950, 1959 is when the first one really came in. There were about 200 of them across America built. Since then, about 880 of them closed. 10% success rate. Millions to close them, millions to open them back up. I completely understand why people are intrigued by this idea of closing a street and giving the entire space to people. It's one of those things where it's like, it makes all the sense in the world until it doesn't make sense. And so I just wanted to share this kind of illustration. When you have 90 feet facade to facade that you give purely to people, you need a ton of people to make that place feel full. When you dedicate your sidewalks to a denser area of grate, but people are rubbing shoulders, they're walking past things, oh, look at that shopping bag, I wonder where they went. That's the magic that happens in our downtowns. We're super familiar with bikes, we're super familiar with cars parking, we're super familiar with walking. So I want to urge you that your issues do not have a single silver bullet solution from a design perspective, it's not a convention center solution or a pedestrian mall solution. It's nibbles at all the different things that continue to make the place better. Finally, let's talk a little bit about crime. You guys have got an amazing history. You guys have, we talked to the school district, we talked to so many of the citizens, and folks here are they really are proud. But I do think that one of the things that I witnessed is you have a community that had a population peak in the 80s. You have a lot of citizens that watched that population decline. You have a lot of people that's like, I remember when JCPenney's, I remember when. And the reality in their minds is, I know that it's never going to be like that. And they're right. It's not going to be like that. And honestly, when you feel like your origin story has started to close, sometimes you would rather do nothing than make an effort and watch it fail again. But what I'm here to tell you is, in America right now, the reinvention that we're seeing in our downtown, the new standard, the new heyday, is a lot more flexible, a lot more dynamic, a lot more engaging. Back in the day, you couldn't stir the people on the stick on Friday night because they didn't have anywhere else they could go. Now the people that are in downtowns are choosing to be in downtowns. So I want to introduce to you, I always like to write what I call a brand statement. So I'm going to read this for you. Clinton has always been defined by movement. Long before highways and railroads, before factories, neighborhoods, and downtown storefronts, there was the Mississippi. It shaped the land, carved the limestone bluffs, nurtured nature, and created a place where people could build, trade, innovate, and call home. Living beside one of the world's great rivers has never meant standing still. It has always meant adapting, growing, rebuilding, and looking towards what comes next. That spirit still defines Clinton today. Clinton is a community with deep roots and remarkable resilience. Generations have built businesses here, raised families here, weathered floods and economic change, celebrated victories, and reinvented themselves when circumstances demanded something new. The city's story is not one of avoiding challenges, but of meeting them with determination and optimism. Every generation has added another chapter, strengthening the foundation of those who follow. Today, Clinton stands at another important moment in its history. Across the community, new investments are taking shape. Historic buildings are finding new purpose. Trails, parks, and public spaces are connecting people to the river and to one another. New businesses are opening. Entrepreneurs are choosing Clinton. Manufacturers continue to invest, and families are discovering the value of a community that offers both opportunity and authenticity. The momentum is real, not because Clinton is trying to become somewhere else, but because it's rediscovering the strength that have always made it unique. Clinton is not one place. It's a collection of places, each contributing its own character to the whole. Historic downtown tells the story of commerce, architecture, and community gathering. Riverfront Park connects residents to one of America's great natural landscapes. Lyons reflects generations of pride and investment. Our industry demonstrates our enduring work ethic and economic strength. Recreation, education, arts, culture, and local traditions each add another layer to a community that is richer because of its diversity. Together, these places create a city that with many experiences, but one shared identity. This is a city shaped by nature, strengthened by industry, inspired by innovation, and connected by people who care deeply about where they live. Here, the river is more than scenery. It is a reminder that progress is continuous, that every bend reveals new possibilities, and that communities willing to move forward while honoring their past become stronger with time. The future of Clinton will not be written by chance. It will be written by people who choose to invest, create, restore, welcome, and believe. It will be written by residents who recognize the extraordinary value of what they have, and by new generations who see opportunity where others see obstacles. So,
Get all that, Matt?
get all that?
I took a screen out of every single one.
Got it. Well,
I didn't see a copywriter.
it's yours, it's yours. So I think that, what I want you guys to see, this idea of kind of telling the story, you all have done a really, really nice job, especially from kind of a branding standpoint. City has got the logo with the steamboat wheel and the waves, integrated into bridges, integrated into park infrastructure. Sometimes with the way that it's presented, you know, if you look at the logo on the left, the name is like, it's whispering. It's okay to yell. So I wanted to give you some additional kind of messaging tools, create some different variations for that brand expansion system, be able to tell those, just kind of giving you those ideas of all the tools that we need to connect those dots. Downtown has done a great job with the new brand identity and rolling that out. And they have done a particularly amazing job with breathing life into it through seasonal variations. If you go to the Facebook page, the profile pics change as the season goes. Love that. That's fantastic. Carry that on. Think about ways that you can have brand extension through color connection. Make sure that Lions has this opportunity to have this logo for themselves. This new move with Riverview Park and kind of leading people into that terminology. Giving the brand available, make it available to your private sector community so they can sell products. Right now, I can buy high school stuff all day long, but can I show pride that this is my home? And it's been cool having Jeff on our team, Jeff growing up in Comanche, like watching that camaraderie, watching him be able to talk about where he's from and watching the response. It's like, Comanche is, it's like the big little brother, you know, it's like you're part of the family and some of us will make fun of you every now and then, but we're glad you're here. And it's really, really cool to see that. So being able to explore all those different opportunities for brand extension. I showed the grill wayfinding system, took a little stab at some of the things. I'm going to give you some recommendations there. These are literally corrugated plastic. It costs about 12 or 15 bucks a piece. Zip tie them on the poles. They can be temporary, they can be seasonal, whatever. I thought it might be fun to do color coded. So like blue could be food and then red could be destination and retail. We heard Peyton talked about the wheel, this connected loop leading people through, having that brand kind of extend through there. And then even time with what Carol talked about with that building concierge that I'm calling building state. This idea of having this single point of contact, this single front welcome mat for investing and doing business here in the community. So with that, I did go longer than I should have, but we've got about 15 minutes or so for questions. We'd love to open it up. Thank you all so much for your attention and spending so much time with us today. But any questions you guys might have for any of the team members?
Maybe you can say, anybody online, so we have like 9, they can put their question in.
Okay, anybody online, feel free to ask questions in the chat and Matt will take a look at this.
I like that guerrilla marketing idea. I hadn't thought of that before and seen it.
Yeah.
I like that.
It's a system that came out of Raleigh, North Carolina. A student at NC State did it as a master's project, went out in the dark of night and put signs up all over the city of Raleigh everybody at the city thought a different department was in charge of it. So they stayed up for like 60 days. And then finally they figured out the signs weren't sanctioned. They took them all down and the community was up in arms. So Blue Cross Blue Shield actually came to the city and said, we'd like to fund putting them back up. So, yes, ma'am.
Say thank you from our whole community, because it's very obvious that each of you put your true time and talent into all of this. So thank you. It's awesome. Every recommendation will be, thought over and considered by our town.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other
I
questions?
have a question.
Go for it.
So self-support municipal improvement districts. Outside of that, what is alternative ways to generate funding to manage these types of programs?
So some communities, and I'll cut me off if I'm saying things wrong. Some communities will layer tax increment financing. Some communities will just have general appropriation to downtown director, things like that. Having a SMID like you guys have, oftentimes SMIDs are going to be directly related to service delivery. Like there's this idea of self-imposed tax, and it's like a lot of times it's seen as a fee for service.
What's this?
Yeah, and because there is that ROI and there is that every 10 years we evaluate whether we want to continue this work. So there could be layered organizational models as well. So there could be almost a slightly more, I guess, economic development focused, like community development corporation, where that might not be the same thing. Like a perfect example, when you have a SMID that is funded by a self-assessed tax, it would be hard for them to justify themselves getting into the world of downtown redevelopment, because by doing that, they literally would be pulling properties off of the tax rolls. So having that strategic component that is thinking about economic development, thinking about redeveloping properties, creating that kind of economic vitality snowball on this end, while your SMID is helping to fund the kind of place maintenance and vibrancy and activation on this end. So that could be something that y'all could explore. But then also just things like foundations and.
And I think one thing that we've seen in Smith, I'm sorry. Smith District Purdue. Yeah. Like, be quiet. No, when a district is created and that Smith is in place, oftentimes we see communities try and push off things that onto that funding mechanism that they're doing in other parts of the community and not charging. Don't punish the SMID because they have income coming in, because this group has chosen to do something extra and not do it downtown when you're doing it somewhere else. So trash removal is a big one.
Should be extra.
We see trash removal, and then all of a sudden, SMID's got to pay for trash removal. You know what? You're picking up trash everywhere else. In, the public trash containers is what I'm talking about, not residential, not business trash, but things like that. Like, don't look at that as a boom. Look at it as what is going to use that money to do that next thing,
Right.
not punish the group that chose to have that.
So I want to kind of build on that. I think when you look at Smith, again, it's self-supported municipal improvement district, the greater the size, the more tax revenue you can potentially bring in because there's more buildings involved and stuff like that. However, at what point does the Smith district get too large? And essentially those services that you are now on paper bringing to offer those people within the district, you can no longer manage because it is so large and you can't do it with just one person.
Yeah, I mean, in Delaware, we don't have SMIDs, we have BIDs, Business Improvement Districts, same setup essentially. And Wilmington, Delaware, Wilmington, they have a downtown bid, and that bid is purely for extra trash and beautification and extra security. And what happens is it's like you have other people that, like fringe properties, that might want to elect to come into the bid, but there's constantly that, can we afford, is the revenue they're going to bring going to match up with the services that they expect? And so I think that clear understanding of the portion of the SMID, that SMID generation and what is expected and what's being measured off of it. And how much of it can we use for activation of vibrancy? How much of it is expected to be used for certain service delivery?
Focus, instead of expanding the district of the SMID and bringing more payers in, increase the values of the properties that are there.
Yes, sir.
You've thrown out a lot of good ideas, about 10 zillion,
Yeah.
my count. And, a lot of them are really good to implement. And in order to implement things, you're gonna need a committee of some kind, I would think. But to help the committee, one of the things I think this community needs to do with their historic development is to do a historic property inventory of the downtown historic district in one section, and then in the other category, do the residential. And the last study that was done in the community was in the 70s, and the book was written in the 80s of the study. So, if you want to preserve these buildings, if you want to renovate them, if you want to repurpose them and all that, it seems to me one of the foundational pieces is you need this historic property inventory study. It's fairly simple to me.
It is, and it's a great comment, and I think, we a couple of the team members recommended exploring this National Register Historic District. That process always starts with the inventory. And the thing that I will say, there's a little bit of math involved because it all it's a structure count and contributing versus non-contributing to create a district that qualifies based off of the historic value of the building. So you might have to be a little bit, a National Register Historic District is one of the few places that I'm pro gerrymandering. Drawing your district where it gets the buildings. But the moment that you do that, you then trigger the ability for those property owners to tie into both state and federal tax credits.
Yeah.
And if you can get a win with a downtown district as that first one, you're gonna now set the process standard for doing these maybe micro districts of historic neighborhoods, Lions, like you can go through, and just want to reiterate it, I think Jeff said it. When you get listed on the National Register, there is absolutely zero regulation that comes along with that. The property owner is not restricted from doing anything.
That was a concern when we brought that up. What was that?
Yeah, my answer is always go look at Soldier Field and they put a spaceship on top of a.
Yeah, it's confusing. I mean, it is one of those things where what it does is it qualifies you for the credits. And if you want to take advantage of the credits, you have to adhere to the historic standards.
Yeah.
But it's the pay to play. It's the golden rule. Who has the golden mix?
Does that trigger additional state of Iowa historic preservation? Because Shipley does not have a great reputation about, oh boy, you don't really want to deal with that.
If you're using tax credits, you gotta follow the rules. SHPO was there as a resource to help you follow the rule. And they do have a bad rap. They have new leadership and they have a lot of changes that are happening. And they are there to help. They really are.
We were coming across a building owner or a business in town that as far as restoring their building, activating it for business and activating the residential. Did you come across somebody's, an example, hey, they're doing it right?
Well, yeah, I mean, this building that we're in, we did come across a couple of building owners that were enthusiastic about the potential of doing it. The opposite side of that is we came across more people who weren't doing it and were very, very quick to tell us all the reasons that it would never work here.
Mm-hmm.
And I hope this doesn't sound arrogant, but it's like, I can't figure out why it wouldn't work here if it works everywhere else, and I think that it doesn't mean that there aren't maybe there's mindsets that have been around for decades. Maybe there's misinterpretation of policy or code. Maybe there are speed bumps that have kept certain things from happening. But I mean, the amount of conversations that this team had this week about sprinklers would blow your mind. But it's one of those things where it's like, guess what? they're literally called international building codes. So like there are codes that are shared by all the places and other places are doing it. So we're doing ourselves a disservice if we're saying no-go before we've even explored. But one of the things that we will be able to do, I might have discovered a mythical non-existent sprinkler grant program. We definitely did find roof stabilization money. And so we're going to give you all a series of places to look so that you can easily start to create that potential funding stack. So the people who are excited or optimistic, don't just say, oh, well, we can't do it because they said that.
Remember, one of the action items I put on there was to invite us back to go into more details on this incentive programs available.
Is that I'm with the newspaper, so it's a reason I'm asking is that, I can write all day about how many problems there are.
Mhm.
But, if I could, show examples of how this has worked,
Right.
I think that would be useful.
Absolutely.
But I need to know.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think we can definitely send some positive case studies your way. We are right at 2:00. On behalf of the team, I want to thank everybody so much for your time today. Thank you for spending so much time with us. Over the next couple of weeks, we're going to get our thoughts together. We're going to put together this final report and get it into Carol's hands. She's going to share it back with everybody in the community. And just a reminder as well, we've got 2 more team members who will be visiting next week and doing a visit focused in Lyons. So Brooke and Jim Thompson will be here next week, and we'll be able to make some additional recommendations focused on Home. So I'm excited to see where that comes. But again, thank you guys so much.
Thank you, guys.
Before we leave, Mike, I want to give Megan a chance to say a few words downtown. We got the spot.
The amount of work we did the last couple days was amazing. Presentation showed it, I know 8 hours. And again, thanks to everyone in the community that helped fix that. So it does take the whole community to focus on an area, whether it's Lyons downtown, West End, too. But yes, so thank you again. This was great. A ton of great ideas, started some great conversations, how to implement some of this.
And that is why you should all be back here July 30th at 2 p.m. Eli is going to be here doing an open house on the BNS and building code and working through what it takes to get existing building. Because I think the key takeaway, right, and here, like, is the growth Clinton like philosophy. And I know we always speak positivity, but we are, there's still Andy's line, there is no utopia. Everywhere has building codes, everywhere requires sprinklers, everywhere has all these things. These things are working everywhere. We've got to focus on connectivity and getting people around this entire town. And focusing on our positive attributes, and that's how we grow. Can't just say, oh, we tried that 30 years ago, it didn't work, or it will never work here. Like, we have to, it is now up to us to implement these ideas and get the ball rolling. So our goal is July 30th at 2 p.m. Eli will stand here for an hour and a half and answer every question you have about building codes as his department knows. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Yeah.